Hi guys, I was asked to make another FA-06 video to show how we can remotely control the speed of the arpeggiator from the DAW. And all DAWs can export MIDI clock. As long as they can work with MIDI, they can export MIDI clock. You just go into the settings, and either the project settings or the system settings, and you export MIDI clock. Any sequencer that's MIDI compatible can export MIDI clock. So we're going to demonstrate this. We have a red MIDI cable hooked to MIDI in on the FA-06, and we have the other end of the MIDI cable hooked to our QX5 sequencer. Now we have this already set so that it exports MIDI clock. We would have to turn it off, but clearly you can see the tempo there is 40, and we can easily send the tempo up and down with the arrow keys. What we have to do now is, and this is the part I suspect the user is not correctly doing, is set the FA-06 to MIDI clock, to use the MIDI clock instead of the internal clock. As you can see, this is internal clock. If I turn the tempo, it goes up and down. I press Arpeggiator, and it works at that speed. If I turn it down lower, it goes lower. So right now the whole FA-06 is being controlled by its own internal clock. Right? To stop that, you go and you press the menu button. Menu button, you select System, you press Enter, and you scroll across until you find Sync Tempo. Notice we have all sorts of tabs on top. D-beam, knob, sound. Sync Tempo is what you want. Sync mode is master. When sync mode is set to master, the FA-06 internal clock is running. If you come here now and you have a MIDI cable plugged into the MIDI in of the FA-06, and you come down here on clock source MIDI, clock source is set to MIDI, doesn't have any effect unless you set this sync mode to slave. Okay, sync mode to slave, sync output on, but we're not interested in outputs right now, we're interested in inputs. Clock source MIDI, sync mode slave. That's all you need to do. Now when you exit and you go to look over here at your tempo, you see 3 little bars, which means that it's not active. Your FA-06 clock has been turned off. This sync knob here has absolutely no effect on anything. You just see 3 little things in the tempo. The tempo is now being controlled by your external MIDI device over MIDI clock, which in the case of the question asked by the user happens to be a DAW. Now what you do is you press the arpeggiator button, and you hear your arpeggiator going really slow. come over here and you increase your tempo. Well, I have to take my key. I'm holding the camera in my hand, so I have to take a hand off the keyboard. But let's go and increase the external tempo now. Look, it's up to 214. Can you see that? 214 tempo on my Yamaha QX5. Now when you play your chord, your FA-06 arpeggiator is running faster at 214 tempo. One last thing I need to tell you is that if you change the studio set right now, your tempo will go back to master. If you want your sync mode to be remembered across all studio sets, just hop up one to tempo assign source and set it to system. Okay? If you set it to system, changing the studio set will not affect your master slave setting, and your arpeggiator will remain synced to your DAW in spite of whatever studio set you decide to choose. Thanks for watching a video on the Stephen Mendes channel, and do have a good day.